The Galactic Empire had expanded across countless star systems, conquering worlds with an efficiency that bordered on boredom. Their fleet, a massive constellation of energy-shielded ships, operated with an air of absolute confidence. For centuries, their vessels had been the epitome of technological supremacy, their shields absorbing every known form of attack, rendering them virtually indestructible. To the Empire, each conquest was a mere formality. When the Empire's long-range scouts stumbled upon Earth, the reaction was almost comedic. Another pre-warp civilization, an Imperial analyst had muttered, scrolling through intercepted signals of old satellites and primitive broadcast networks. The report concluded that Earth's technology was archaic, its weaponry obsolete, and its people irrelevant. The commanding officer overseeing this new discovery hardly gave it a second glance. A simple directive was issued: subjugate and integrate. Earth, for its part, was unaware of the danger looming in the cold void of space. Scientists on the International Space Station detected faint anomalies, patterns in the stars that seemed artificially controlled. Ground-based telescopes picked up signals, but the information was dismissed as background noise. It wasn't until the massive Imperial fleet began its approach, blocking out patches of stars, that humanity realized it was no longer alone, and that it was being targeted. Global panic ensued. Governments scrambled to assess the situation, broadcasting emergency alerts as the Imperial fleet moved into position. Humanity, fractured by borders and conflicting interests, suddenly faced a unified threat. For the first time in decades, the world came together in a hastily convened global council. The question on everyone's mind: surrender or resist? The answer came from a lone, resolute voice: we fight. The Imperial fleet broadcast its ultimatum shortly after entering Earth's orbit. The message, translated into every major language, was delivered in the cold, calculated tone of a machine. Surrender your planet and submit to the Galactic Empire. Resistance will result in total annihilation. The response was silence. On Earth, leaders braced for the worst, knowing they had little to no chance against an interstellar force. Humanity's greatest weapons, nuclear missiles, seemed laughable against a fleet capable of traversing the galaxy. Conventional wisdom said there was no point in resisting, but conventional wisdom underestimated the human spirit. In the midst of global chaos, a retired military engineer named Marcus Carter was scanning old schematics in his rural workshop. Marcus had spent decades designing anti-aircraft artillery for past conflicts, though his work had long been shelved in favor of sleek, modern missile systems. As news of the Empire's arrival spread, Marcus began obsessing over the broadcasts of the enemy ships. He noticed something peculiar: their shields shimmered faintly when exposed to Earth's atmosphere. The observation nagged at him. "That's not perfect," he muttered to himself. Marcus reached out to a former colleague in the military, sharing his hypothesis. The shields, he argued, might have vulnerabilities when exposed to certain conditions, something humanity could exploit. His colleague dismissed him at first. "What good is a theory when we don't even have the tools to scratch their paint?" But desperation has a way of making even wild ideas seem worth pursuing. Meanwhile, Imperial ships began demonstrating their might. A single cruiser descended over New York City, hovering ominously in the skies. A bright lance of energy descended, carving through buildings with surgical precision. The message was clear: humanity's weapons were useless. Missiles and fighter jets scrambled to respond, but every effort ended the same. The Empire's shields absorbed every attack effortlessly, the ships gliding through the air like gods among insects. In the shadows of this despair, Marcus and a small group of engineers worked tirelessly. The retired artillery systems, once considered relics, were dusted off and hauled into hidden bunkers. These systems, designed for physical projectiles rather than energy weapons, represented a stark contrast to modern warfare. "It's not about the size of the weapon," Marcus argued, "but where you aim it." The first test was a gamble. A lone anti-aircraft gun, retrofitted with a custom EMP payload, targeted an Imperial scout ship hovering low over a military base. The shot was precise, the projectile slamming into the shimmering shield. For a split second, the energy field flickered, and the scout ship wobbled midair. Though the ship remained intact, the results sent shockwaves through the underground resistance network. They had found a weakness. Word of the test spread rapidly, reaching the highest levels of Earth's hastily formed defense coalition. Military commanders initially scoffed at the notion of using ancient weapons, but the footage of the shield flicker was undeniable. Marcus's team was granted access to every available resource, and work began on scaling the concept for a larger offensive. As the Empire prepared to launch its full-scale assault, Earth's defenses took shape in secret. In bunkers and factories across the globe, engineers worked around the clock, modifying anti-aircraft systems and designing payloads specifically tuned to disrupt the Imperial shields. It was a race against time, the odds heavily stacked against humanity. For the Empire, it was business as usual. Their ships moved with precision, their commanders confident in their unbroken record of victories. The idea that this primitive planet could mount any significant resistance was laughable. What they failed to consider was humanity's relentless ingenuity, the ability to adapt under pressure, and the willingness to try the unthinkable in the face of certain doom. As the Imperial fleet descended closer to the planet, the stage was set for a confrontation that would change the course of galactic history. The Empire saw Earth as a mere stepping stone, but for humanity, it was a fight for survival. And in the quiet moments before the battle, Marcus Carter stood beside his newly retrofitted anti-aircraft battery, muttering to himself, "Let's see if gods can bleed." The Imperial fleet descended into Earth's orbit, their gleaming ships casting long shadows across the surface. The planet's silence was unnerving to the Empire's officers, who were used to panic broadcasts and desperate pleas for mercy. Earth, however, had gone quiet, not out of submission but determination. From hidden bunkers to fortified cities, humanity braced for impact. The first wave of bombardment began with surgical precision. Beams of energy sliced through landmarks, turning monuments of human history into molten craters. Major military installations were obliterated, and any attempt at a counterattack was swatted away by the impenetrable shields. Fighter jets disintegrated midair, missiles exploded harmlessly against glowing barriers, and even Earth's most advanced weapons proved futile. For the Empire, it was a routine demonstration of dominance. But beneath the surface, humanity was adapting. Marcus Carter's retrofitted anti-aircraft system had sparked hope, but hope alone wasn't enough. The first shield flicker from the scout ship's test had been studied exhaustively. Scientists and engineers, spurred by desperation and ingenuity, began fine-tuning projectile designs. The goal was clear: disrupt the shields long enough to allow physical damage. The breakthrough came when a young physicist proposed adding an electromagnetic pulse to the payload. While energy-based weapons bounced harmlessly off the shields themselves relied on an intricate web of energy circuits. An EMP, delivered at the right frequency, could momentarily overload those circuits, creating a small but exploitable gap. Combined with high-velocity projectiles, the shields might falter under concentrated fire. It wasn't a perfect plan, but perfection wasn't the goal. Humanity needed something, anything, to level the playing field. Engineers worked around the clock in hidden workshops, repurposing old anti-aircraft systems and retrofitting them with the new EMP kinetic hybrid rounds. Factories once dedicated to consumer goods were now churning out ammunition and support systems. Soldiers, many of whom had never seen combat, were trained in the use of these antiquated weapons. The Imperial fleet, oblivious to this effort, escalated its campaign. Smaller cruisers descended into lower atmospheres, patrolling major cities and maintaining a stranglehold on the skies. Imperial commanders broadcast images of destruction, expecting Earth's leaders to surrender. When no reply came, they prepared to unleash a full-scale planetary assault. The first real test of Earth's countermeasures came during an Imperial raid on a strategically insignificant town. A single cruiser hovered low, firing energy beams at sporadic resistance below. Hidden among the rubble was one of Marcus's retrofitted batteries, manned by a handful of terrified but resolute soldiers. When the order came, they fired. The projectile screamed through the air, striking the glowing shield with a burst of light and sound. For a fraction of a second, the cruiser's shield flickered, and then the impossible happened, it collapsed entirely. The ship wobbled as a second round pierced its hull, sending debris raining down. The sight of the great Imperial cruiser falling from the sky was broadcast to resistance forces across the globe. The Empire reacted swiftly, sending reinforcements to investigate. What they found was both shocking and infuriating: humans using ancient weapons to destroy ships that had survived countless battles. The Imperial commander overseeing the invasion dismissed the incident as a fluke, a lucky shot against a weakened shield. But the reports kept coming. Other cruisers faced similar fates, and whispers of Earth's newfound ability spread among the fleet. On the ground, the morale shift was palpable. For the first time since the invasion began, people felt something other than despair. Across military installations, soldiers trained relentlessly, determined to replicate the results of that first victory. Engineers refined the EMP projectiles further, calibrating frequencies and designing more powerful systems. Leaders coordinated their efforts, deploying the retrofitted batteries to critical locations. The Empire, however, was not idle. Recognizing the growing threat, they deployed larger ships with stronger shields and intensified their attacks. Entire cities were flattened in retaliation, but humanity refused to break. Each bombardment was met with counterfire, and each fallen cruiser provided valuable debris for study. Scientists analyzed fragments of shield technology, uncovering weaknesses the Empire had never bothered to hide because they had never needed to. The turning point came during a coordinated strike against an Imperial staging area in the Pacific. Multiple batteries fired in unison, overwhelming the shields of 3 cruisers simultaneously. The sight of those ships plummeting into the ocean sent shockwaves through the Empire's command structure. For the first time in centuries, the invincible fleet was losing. Amidst the chaos, the Empire began to make mistakes. Overconfident commanders underestimated Earth's evolving tactics, sending ships into traps that left them vulnerable. The humans, in contrast, grew bolder. Guerrilla warfare tactics emerged, with smaller teams using portable versions of the EMP weaponry to ambush Imperial patrols. Every engagement taught humanity something new, and every victory emboldened their resolve. Despite their growing success, humanity knew this was only the beginning. The Empire still held overwhelming superiority in numbers and technology. But what the Empire failed to account for, and what humanity excelled at, was the ability to adapt. Earth's defenders didn't need to match the Empire's ship for ship, they only needed to keep finding ways to exploit their weaknesses. And as the Empire's fleet tightened its grip on Earth, humanity prepared for the next phase of their resistance. The first real cracks in the Empire's confidence began to show as more of their ships fell to the ground, shattered by humanity's relentless counterattacks. What had started as a calculated invasion now felt like a drawn-out battle of attrition, and the Empire was unprepared for this kind of resistance. For centuries, their ships had operated under the assumption of invincibility. Shields had always been enough, no civilization had ever bypassed them. But Earth was rewriting that narrative. The humans had proven themselves more than just stubborn, they were ingenious. Every downed Imperial cruiser became an opportunity to learn. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, salvaging fragments of alien technology from crash sites. Bit by bit, they pieced together the intricacies of the Empire's shielding systems. What emerged was a deeper understanding of how to exploit their weaknesses more effectively. The shields, it turned out, were vulnerable to specific frequencies of electromagnetic interference. By overloading the systems with carefully calibrated EMP bursts, the shields could be temporarily disrupted, leaving the ships exposed to physical damage. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was enough to turn the tide of smaller engagements. The knowledge spread quickly, and soon, every retrofitted anti-aircraft battery was equipped with enhanced EMP capabilities. The Empire, meanwhile, was growing increasingly desperate. Their commanders were unaccustomed to prolonged resistance and began making errors in judgment. Overconfident captains sent ships deeper into Earth's atmosphere, where the shields were less stable, allowing human defenses to exploit their vulnerabilities more easily. Patrols became reckless, venturing into zones where guerrilla fighters were lying in wait with portable EMP launchers. What started as isolated victories for humanity began to snowball into a pattern the Empire couldn't ignore. One of the most decisive moments came during an Imperial attempt to reinforce their fleet with a massive dreadnought. The dreadnought was a towering symbol of Imperial might, a vessel so large it could block out the sky. Its shields were rumored to be impervious to any known weaponry, and its arrival was meant to crush Earth's resistance in a single, devastating strike. Instead, it became a symbol of the Empire's growing vulnerability. Humanity had anticipated the move. The scientists who had been studying the shielding systems had developed a new kind of weapon, an EMP pulse cannon capable of delivering a sustained burst strong enough to disable even the largest shields. It was untested, experimental, and risky, but it was their best chance to take down the dreadnought. Positioned on a hidden mountain base, the cannon fired as the massive ship moved into range. The pulse hit its mark, and for the first time, the dreadnought's shields flickered. The moment of exposure was brief, but it was enough. Coordinated fire from Earth's remaining batteries and missile systems targeted the exposed sections of the ship, sending shockwaves through its hull. The dreadnought faltered, struggling to regain control as its shields collapsed entirely. A final barrage struck its core, and the once mighty vessel exploded in a blinding flash, scattering debris across the atmosphere. The destruction of the dreadnought was a turning point not just for the battle over Earth but for the morale of both sides. For humanity, it was proof that even the Empire's most advanced ships could be defeated. For the Empire, it was a blow to their pride and a realization that they had severely underestimated their enemy. The Imperial fleet began to retreat from lower atmospheres, opting instead to regroup in orbit. But even there, they weren't safe. Humanity, emboldened by their victories, pushed their ingenuity further. Satellites once used for communication and observation were retrofitted into makeshift weapons platforms, equipped with EMP projectors and kinetic impactors. These platforms harassed the Imperial fleet relentlessly, forcing them to stay on the defensive. On the ground, the resistance intensified. Portable EMP devices became the weapon of choice for guerrilla fighters, who used hit-and-run tactics to disable Imperial patrols and supply ships. Every successful ambush further demoralized the Empire's ground forces, who found themselves increasingly isolated and cut off from reinforcements. The Empire's response grew increasingly erratic. They attempted to escalate their attacks, targeting civilian populations in a bid to force humanity into submission. But rather than breaking the will of Earth's defenders, it only strengthened their resolve. Every act of destruction fueled the resistance, uniting humanity in a way that had never been seen before. The Empire had miscalculated. They had underestimated not only humanity's ingenuity, but also their resilience. The final days of the Empire's campaign on Earth were marked by chaos and desperation. Their once coordinated fleet was now fragmented, struggling to maintain control as human forces pressed their advantage. The shield technology that had been their greatest strength was now their Achilles heel, exploited at every turn by an enemy they had once dismissed as primitive. In the end, the Empire's retreat was inevitable. The cost of the invasion had grown too high, and the risk of losing more ships outweighed any potential gain. One by one, the Imperial vessels began to withdraw, leaving Earth battered but unbeaten. As the last of the ships disappeared into the void, humanity stood victorious. Having achieved what no other civilization had managed before, they had forced the Galactic Empire to retreat. The Empire's retreat from Earth was not swift. It was a slow, grinding process, marked by desperation and humiliation. As their ships left the atmosphere, the once pristine fleet bore the scars of countless battles, gaping hull breaches, shattered sections, and the remains of once impenetrable shields. For the Galactic Empire, whose dominance had gone unchallenged for millennia, this was an unthinkable failure. For humanity, it was a hard-won victory, bought with ingenuity, sacrifice, and an unrelenting will to survive. The aftermath was a strange mix of devastation and triumph. Cities lay in ruins, entire regions scarred by the bombardment, but amidst the rubble was an undeniable sense of pride. The people of Earth had stood their ground against the most powerful force in the galaxy, and had sent it fleeing. Across the planet, celebrations erupted even as rescue and recovery efforts began in earnest. Military leaders and engineers gathered to assess the lessons of the conflict. The technology salvaged from downed Imperial ships had proven invaluable, offering insights that humanity had only begun to explore. Scientists worked tirelessly to reverse engineer the shielding systems, propulsion methods, and even weaponry of their former invaders. What had once seemed like magic was now being dismantled, analyzed, and understood. But the war had also left scars deeper than the physical destruction. Millions had perished in the battles, and entire generations bore the psychological weight of witnessing Earth come so close to annihilation. While the victory had united humanity, it also served as a grim reminder of how fragile their existence had been. Leaders vowed to never again be caught off guard, initiating massive global efforts to prepare for future threats. The Empire's defeat on Earth rippled across the galaxy. News of their failure spread far and wide, reaching even the most distant colonies. For centuries, the Galactic Empire had been seen as an unshakable force, a monolith that could crush any opposition. Now, that image was shattered. Rebellions began to stir in far-off corners of the galaxy, fueled by whispers of the humans who had done the impossible. If Earth, a backwater planet with primitive technology, could stand against the Empire, then perhaps the same was possible elsewhere. Within the Empire itself, the repercussions were seismic. The defeat called into question the leadership of the High Command, who had dismissed Earth as an insignificant target. Political factions within the Empire began to fracture, blaming each other for the failure. Some argued for a renewed campaign to reassert dominance, but others warned that such an effort could lead to even greater losses. The seeds of dissent were sown, and for the first time in centuries, the Empire's grip on its territories began to loosen. On Earth, the focus shifted from survival to adaptation. The technology left behind by the Empire was more than just a tool for defense. It was a gateway to the stars. Humanity had always dreamed of reaching beyond their solar system, and now that dream was closer than ever. With the knowledge gained from their invaders, Earth scientists developed new propulsion systems, energy sources, and communication methods. Within years, humanity was no longer confined to their home planet. They began to explore, to expand, and to prepare. The Galactic Empire, though weakened, remained a formidable force. They watched humanity's progress with a mixture of fear and curiosity. For the first time, they treated Earth not as a minor player but as a potential rival. Diplomatic probes were sent to gauge humanity's intentions, but Earth's leaders were cautious. They knew that trust with the Empire would be fragile, if not impossible. Instead, humanity began forming alliances with other oppressed worlds, sharing their hard-earned knowledge to build a coalition of resistance. The victory over the Empire became a defining moment for humanity, a story that would be told for generations. It was not just a tale of survival but of resilience, ingenuity, and the power of unity in the face of overwhelming odds. The lessons of the war were etched into humanity's collective memory, serving as a reminder of both their vulnerabilities and their strengths. For the Empire, Earth was a wound that refused to heal. The memory of their retreat haunted them, a stark contrast to the unbroken victories of the past. Their leaders knew that humanity's rise was inevitable, and that the galaxy would never be the same. The indomitable spirit of Earth's people had changed the course of history, proving that even the mightiest empires could be brought low by the determination of the underestimated. In the years that followed, Earth transformed into a beacon of hope for countless worlds. What had once been a planet on the fringes of galactic civilization was now a symbol of resistance and possibility. The name, Earth, became synonymous with defiance, a rallying cry for those who sought to challenge the status quo. And so, humanity stepped into the stars, not as conquerors but as survivors. They carried with them the lessons of their struggle, and the knowledge that even the most indestructible can be broken. The Galactic Empire had underestimated them, and in doing so, had sealed its own fate. For Earth, the future was no longer something to fear. It was something to forge.